more breath? Yeah. Spirit. Here we go. Have you ever had a moment where the fear of scarcity, not being good enough, perfectionism, the need to please others all the time, fear of rejection, they just get in the way? And somehow they kind of like take over your personality, and you end up reacting from this narrow perspective. Has that ever happened to you? And and then you end up feeling like, oh shit, I should have known better, you know. And if you're here, you've probably done some work on yourself, so there's a little shame with that. How do I get rid of this, you know? How do I get rid of this part of me? The problem is that most people think that there's something to get rid of, that these things that are challenges in our personality, they're things that we want to get rid of. When the real problem is that most of us don't know how to integrate them. And we want to integrate these parts of our personality. We want them to develop because when we do, they give us access to unique qualities and ways of being in the world as uniquely ourselves. In psychosynthesis, the main process that I guide people through in my work was created by a great psychiatrist and mystic in his own right, Roberto Asciagioli. We call these parts, the split in our personality, sub-personalities. Some people refer to them as shadows. And they are formed in our formative years, in our childhood, due to unmet needs or wants or verbal, physical, or emotional trauma. I was born in Colombia. When I was 4 years old, my parents separated. My mom had big visions for her life and for her 2 children, my big brother and I. And she knew that she couldn't make those visions come true with my father because he wasn't determined enough. He wasn't like her. So they weren't in alignment. So like many decisive women do in that time, she moved to the United States. She decided she was moving to the United States, and she left her children with relatives. Many immigrants can relate to that, right? Our parents leaving us behind. And as an adult, I can see this, and I'm so grateful for it. I'm here, right? It's like I grew up here. I speak 3 languages. I'm so grateful for my mom. I understand why she did it. But as a child, my mommy left me. My mom left me. And my father, I didn't see him. I saw him a few times a year. And we went on to live in another city with my Aunt Sandra, and she was great. I'm named after her. She had 2 children of her own, and she was already taking care of 2 other children of the family. And like that wasn't enough and challenging enough for her. I was difficult. I cried a lot. I acted out. I got in trouble with the other kids. I was sad. And so eventually the decision was made that I go live with another one of my mother's sisters. And my brother went on to live with my grandparents, another separation. And then the year after that, I went on to live with another one of my aunts. And the year after that, with another one of my aunts. And this shuffling around went on for 5 years. By the time I was 9, and I moved with my mother to New York City, she brought us to the United States, this wounding was already formed. I wasn't enough, right? I wasn't lovable enough. I wasn't worthy of being loved by somebody. And this was my self-image, and it crushed my self-esteem, right? This was the window through which I saw the world. Luckily, I found acting, the theater. And this was great because I was finally seen, and I was heard. And there I was playing the character of Judy. Of alcoholic woman who just said it like she saw it, and I'm there, very different from me, by the way, at that time. And it just hit me. My God, I play all these roles on stage, but I kind of also play all these roles in life. And so through my yogic path, right, and being a seeker and traveling alone, I started to have all these experiences of being essence, of just connecting to my soul, of being this becoming that was so much more than the stories of my past or the roles that I played. And I started to ask myself, what if I could identify more with that essence of being than with my stories and these little roles that, think to take over? I didn't know it back then, but personality work was something that I was already doing, right? I didn't have the language for it yet. But let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like you had to perform for somebody? Yes. Like a parent or a partner, right? You got to perform differently when you go to work, kind of. Or society in general, Or maybe because you've just been this way. This is the way I am. And you think that's the way you have to be, or you're a victim to it for the rest of your life. Close your eyes for a second. I want you to think of something that has gotten in the way of your behavior, that has been a challenge to you, whether it's perfectionism, the need to please others all the time, anxiety, getting angry easily, the fear of rejection, whatever that is. And bring it into your forefront and just be with it for a second. And I want you to think about what would happen if you behaved like this all the time, if this was you in every area of your life. How would it affect your work, your creative endeavors, your relationships? Can you imagine? Take a deep breath in and let that go. And stay with me here. And now I want you to consider, how has that part served you? Any of you here? No, that has definitely not served me at all. I want you to bring one hand on your heart and ask again, ask a little bit closer, how has it served you? What are some of its gifts? Listen. And take a mental note. Take a deep breath in and let it out. When you're ready, you can come back to the space. So I realized I had been doing subpersonality work even before psychosynthesis because I was introspective and using the tools that I had at the time, which was script analysis, because when you're an actor and you're given a role, you have to break down the character to understand its motivations, to understand its worldview, and why it's going after what it's going after. So I started to do the same kind of work with my own character to see if I could develop it, my real life. And in doing this, I realized that, well, this part that I thought was a challenge actually gave me the gift of loving and seeking solitude, of being able to move without following the masses. It gave me my empathy, my sensitivity. I mean, this is why I'm able to connect with people so deeply. What would I do without it? Who would I be without it? So our subpersonalities are the parts of us that are malnourished. They need our attention. And sometimes they show up in their distortions because we have not yet illuminated them with the light of our awareness. And we need to do that for their development so that we can access their gifts. In the Conscious Creator Experience, my program that I've developed, we work on doing exactly this. We integrate our personality. We connect to the center of self so that our soul can express through it. My invitation for you is that when you walk out of here today and you find yourself with a part of you that you just don't like, and you're just like, oh, how do I get rid of this? Why is it always showing up? Or perhaps you just don't even look at it because it's just too much. I'm going to act like I don't have that right now. That's not me, because it doesn't fit your self-image of how you want to be seen in the world. That you actually stop and you bring a hand on your heart and you get really curious. And you ask yourself, could this part of me be trying to serve me in some way? Could it be trying to protect me? Is it trying to show me what's out of alignment so I can do something about it? Is it pointing me to one of my gifts? When I look at that little girl, that 4, 5, 6-year-old girl who was too much for everybody, right? Throwing tantrums and having so much emotion and like suffering, really suffering because she wasn't understood. I say, thank you. Thank you. You've been my master teacher. This acceptance can be a pivotal, transformative experience in your life. When you don't run away from yourself, but you include yourself so that your story becomes the nourishment for the fullness expression of your soul. Thank you. Yay.